What are we discussing on today's podcast, you ask? Well, it's crossover time with Javier of Locked On Padres discussing, will the San Diego Padres leapfrog the D-backs in the standings? It's getting way too close for comfort, so we're going to discuss that, this series, the wild card race, and so much more on today's Locked On Diamondbacks crossover.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And without further ado, to talk about the upcoming series against the San Diego Padres, we bringing on the voice of Locked On Padres to do a little series preview. As always, Javier Reyes. How you doing today, sir?
Look, man, driving and thriving.
What? Driving and thriving? What are we talking about here?
I don't know. Look, as someone in New Jersey, I watch some Knicks games every now and then. And Clyde Walt Frazier, as people may know, he does like this rhyme thing where he's like roasting and toasting, driving and finding. And I was trying to do that there, I think. Anyway, that was a deep cut reference, but I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right, despite the Padres being really whatever. And I know the Diamondbacks have been having a weird go of things too. Both of our teams, really. I mean, look at you. You look like you're exhausted already. I mean, just thinking about it. But overall, things are still okay, I think, over here in the dirty Jersey.
Yeah, I want to make a plea for this podcast because we're about to do a series preview. And, you know, I've been so nice to Javier Reyes this whole season whenever we've done crossovers, whenever we do a draft, whenever we talk about the Padres and the kind of season they had. I've just been so nice, so cordial to you. And we're about to do the series preview where quite literally the whole standings can flip on its head. The Padres can leapfrog the D-backs. So I just want to go into this pod. Let's make sure we keep it cordial. Let's keep it respectful. And let's keep it joyful at the end of the day, because this thing could get a little wild. Because as we enter this series, D-backs versus Padres, of course, both of our teams were recording this before they play tonight's game, Wednesday night, that is. But going to this series, I mean, potentially the Padres could just be one game back of the D-backs in the standings. And this could be a huge pivotal series for both of us, not just because I don't want to see the Padres leapfrog the D-backs in the standings, because that would be absolutely awful after all the crap I've given you this year, but also the Padres are quietly, because that third spot in the wild card race, no one has really taken advantage of it yet. The Padres are still kind of in this thing. So as you're gearing up for this final, 5-6 weeks of the season, and your team just kind of been floundering all around, but you look up, it's going to be mid-August and the Padres only a few games back. Like, are you kind of convincing yourself? Do you have a little bit of hope deep down? Like, yeah, we still got stars all over this roster. Give us one good week, anything's possible.
I love what you said there at the end. We have stars all over this team. Give us one good week. That has been the saying for not just myself, but I think Padres fans in general. I'm going to say for the last month and a half.
Okay.
Everyone has been waiting for them to just have even just a week. Like, that's serious. Just a week where they win like 6 of 7, 7 of 8, and like everyone's on fire. You just have like a great, awesome week. That has not happened literally all year, and it's crazy. I mean, recently they've been playing a little bit better. In July, I believe they had the best record in the National League, or at least one of the best records in the National League. And obviously everybody brings up their starting pitching ERA, their great defense with Ha-Seong Kim and Fernando Tatis Jr. especially. Machado, obviously, he's great. You have great defense, Xander Bogaerts, and then you have the run differential, which is plus 61 at the time we're recording, which is better than the Brewers, which is better than the Phillies. Shouts to Michael Lorenzen. He just threw a no-hitter, though. Better than the Marlins. Better than the beloved Baltimore. Or no, not anymore. It used to be better than the Orioles. And the Blue Jays. Like, a lot of playoff teams. And a lot of teams with positive records. Yet they're 4 games under 500. So, while, yes, it's true, all they need is, like, one good week. And, hey, I mean, in fairness, this is the type of series that flips a season. Because not only did they play them for 3 this weekend, then the Padres, at least, they play a few games against the aforementioned Orioles. Then they go back and we play the Diamondbacks again. If they go positive over these 7 games with the Diamondbacks, then yeah, I mean, things could change. But then it could also go the other way. And most of the season, it seems like it's gone the other way. But yeah, it's not over yet. It's just when people, here's what it is. Am I done? No. But if someone asks me, like, are they making the playoffs? I'm like, no. Like, I feel very, very confident in that, because I just feel like there's a difference between all the numbers that I mentioned before. And if you watch this team all year, the fight is just not there. If Corbin Carroll hits a 2-run home run to start this series off of, I forgot who the projected starter is, then I promise you, man, they are not scoring for like until the 7th inning. And then by then, the Diamondbacks might have increased their lead, right? That's just what it's like watching this team all year. They just, bullpen blows a game sometimes. You had, Darvish had an incredible start against the Dodgers, and then the bullpen blew up for like 12 runs or whatever it was this past weekend. So in my experience, the Padres are cooked, even if the standings suggest otherwise.
Because, like, I feel the same way with the D-backs. I feel like at this point in the season, they're cooked as well. But you look at the standings, and after every loss, I'm like, there's still only a game and a half back of that third wild card spot. So it's like, as much as I see this team suck and they just rip my heart out every single night, I'm like, I just have to keep just a little inkling of hope, just that 2% left in the reserve tank, just in case if the D-backs do make the playoffs, it could turn it all around, because I feel like I'm in the same boat as you've probably been the whole season with this D-backs team, because we're having the same issues. Because, like, I listen, if the Padres score first against the D-backs, I don't know if the D-backs are going to come back, because the D-backs at one point were called the answer backs. They were one of the best teams in Major League Baseball, making comebacks, and now it's like every other team is making comebacks against the D-backs. D-backs are blowing leads in the 9th inning left and right. Their bullpen can't hold down anything. So I think upcoming, when we look at both of these team schedules, like, they're entering the most pivotal stretch, I think, of their season, because they're playing each other. Both of those teams have to fight each other in the playoff race. I just looked at the Padres schedule. They also got teams like the Miami Marlins, Milwaukee Brewers coming up, like a lot of teams that are directly ahead of you in this NL wildcard race. So it's like, I don't like my team, I don't like your team, but you never know. It's not like any other. The thing is, there's not like any other team for that third wildcard spot that has really separated themselves from the rest of the pack, right? The Miami Marlins have also sucked post All-Star game. The Giants, they've been like solid, but they haven't been great. So no one has really said, maybe the Chicago Cubs are like the only team that's gone hot, but a team like the Cincinnati Reds too haven't really separated themselves either. So I just want to see how this is all going to shake out at the end, because even though I think every team who's like, every fan of a team who's fighting for that third wild card spot, I think we all feel the same, because all of our teams suck right now post All-Star break. We all don't have a lot of hope. At the same time, we're all looking at the standings and we're like, yeah, we're still in the same group. So I'm just kind of, I just want to see who's going to pull away from that third group for that third wild card spot, because I currently don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And it's funny because, like, people will make jokes like, just no one wants to win. No one wants the final wild card spot. That's kind of the vibe. And it reminds me very distinctly of 2021, where the Padres were in a similar situation with the Cincinnati Reds and a little bit of the Philadelphia Phillies, where everyone was like, it's going to be one of those three, right? And they all refused. The Padres were like, you know what? Instead, Manny Machado and Tatis are going to have a fight in the dugout. You know what? We're going to get no hit by your boy on the Diamondbacks.
Tyler Gilbert.
There we go. Tyler Gilbert getting no hit by a guy who was making his debut, right? That's what the Padres did. The Reds refused to add anything at the deadline, and then they fall off, right? And then the Cardinals were like, okay, I guess we'll take it. You know what I mean? And then they just ended up going to the postseason. So I don't know who the Cardinals would be this year, but yeah, man, it's just very like up and down. Every time you think you have a vibe, it's just the teams don't seemingly want it. They don't want the wild card spot, and it's odd, because this isn't like the NBA where nobody wants the 7th seed, because it's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't. You're just going to get smoked by Nikola Jokic or something. But with this case, I don't know. The Cubs are currently the team right now, but it can really be kind of anyone. The only one that I personally will eliminate is the Reds. I just don't see it. I think they have no pitching. And maybe if they get healthy at the end of the month. I mean, they don't. They don't. Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft,
Luke Weaver
making headlines yesterday. So there's that. But yeah, I don't see the Reds, just because I don't think that I think they're playing with house money anyway. So it's not that bad if they don't make it. But yeah, man, we're gonna have to
Yeah, on paper, the Reds never felt like a great team. They always just felt like a great story that was just caught lightning in a bottle, especially when Ella De La Cruz. But I never like took the Reds seriously. I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this team is gonna go on a run the rest of the season on paper, because
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, you look at that rotation, some of the pitching, you're like, every guy in this rotation is like a 5 ERA. I don't know how
It's ridiculous.
I don't know how sustainable that is for your long-term plan. So yeah, it's going to be curious how this NL wildcard race stacks up. And I want to talk about how many teams you think the NL West could send to the playoffs. You know, Dodgers, Giants, or maybe one of our teams as well could be sent there. But before we get into that conversation, Javi, I first need to tell our listeners about this little service called Game Time, because if you want to buy tickets without the stress, Game Time is the best place for last minute ticket deals, because forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And don't forget to catch every D-backs and Padres pitch on their hometown broadcast when you download the Sirius XM app and either search up Diamondbacks or Padres. Now back into the crossover, Locked On Padres. Host Javier Reyes discussing if the Padres could leapfrog the D-backs in the standings. And it seems like we just mentioned how none of the teams in that wildcard race is really trying to take that final wildcard spot. And do you ever think there is any shenanigans when it comes to baseball? Like, there's no lottery. I guess we do have a lottery system now, don't we? Like, is it a little bit more advantageous for a team to miss the playoffs to potentially get that number one pick? It feels like the last few years, the number one pick has become a little bit more valuable, at least a little bit. Like, I feel like we at least know in the last few years who's going number one in these MLB drafts. I feel like I heard the name a little bit more. It might be a Dylan Cruz, it might be a Jack Leiter, it might be a Drew Jones, whoever. I feel like that guy who's going to be taken number one has become a little bit more name value the last few years. I wonder, with the movement to a lottery system in this MLB draft, I wonder if we're going to see a few more teams maybe try to skip out on the playoffs.
I agree. However, I think they never needed a reason to skip out of the playoffs to start. You know what I mean? Like, you have all these teams that are just trading away guys all the time. You have your Oaklands, you have your Royals and whatnot, and they stay at the bottom to seemingly no avail, right? And unlike the other sports, say football, you can get your quarterback, right? And then basketball, you could get Victor Wembanyama or whatever, right? Like, I think that you could see teams, if anything, one thing I think is just a lot of teams are going to be a lot more careful with trading the golden top prospects. I think that's what we're seeing more of now. And I think back in the day, people used to trade like a little bit more of their top level prospects if they get a big player. And sometimes it would turn out great, because sometimes, you know, their prospects, as you and I have both talked about, oftentimes they're not going to be the next, in the case of the D-backs, next Paul Goldschmidt. They're not going to be the next, you know, Ketel Marte, right? Like, that's just not necessarily what happens. But I do think that teams are just really relishing in like the top ones, not your number 40 ranks on the top 100, which is a good prospect to have. That's good. But I think those like top 10 guys, I feel like teams aren't going to trade those guys anymore. And I think that they're going to stand by them, because I think they look at it and say, if this guy's at minimum, let's say a 2.5 to 3 win player, and he's controllable for so long, I just think that that's really valuable, especially for the teams that don't like to spend. So, you know, and again, that doesn't mean they're going to be a star, but say you get someone like Alec Bohm, right? Like, just solid players. I just think that those guys are going to be valued really, really highly. And don't get me wrong, some of them are amazing, like your Adley Rutschmans, your Wander Francos, like guys like that. But I think for the most part, people are going to be like, you know what? The golden top ones we're not trading. So like the Padres, for example, now they did just trade their golden ones last year, but that was for Juan Soto. So if there was ever a time to trade them, that was it. But like the Padres, I don't see them trading like Jackson Merrill or Ethan Salas, really, unless something really crazy happens. Like, you know, I can't even think of a player that would make sense to be made available. Like Aaron Judge becomes available for no reason, right? Like, aside from that, yeah, man, I think mostly the teams are just They're going to tank, but not because they want to do well in the draft. They're going to tank because they don't want to spend. I think is a long-winded way of saying it.
Yeah, I never felt like you had to tank in baseball just because it's so hard to actually like hit on these prospects, and it's like everyone's scouting board just feels so different. It probably never made much sense. I just wonder if it's ever going to happen if we ever get that Victor Wembanyama level prospect in the MLB, right? Because Bryce Harper was kind of that guy when he was already on Sports Illustrated on the cover for high school, when he was in high school on the cover of Sports Illustrated and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wonder if we ever get to a point where it's like, okay, this guy that's going to be taken next year, he's undoubtedly like, he's basically Shohei Ohtani. He's the best pitcher and position player, and he's coming out of high school. Like, that's going to be the undoubted number one pick. I wonder if then there's a few teams, if you are a team like the Cincinnati Reds who have had this good season, but it's like, you know what? We probably don't have a realistic shot to make it to the World Series. Let's just tank the final few weeks. If we get that number one pick in the draft, then all of a sudden we get to add maybe this generational talent that could really help us in a couple years. Because if you're really that good of a prospect, you might only need 9 years. Oh, not 9 years, 9 months in the farm system, or maybe just a year and a half. Because we've seen guys like the Ben Tendys and the Jose Fernandezes spend like less than 2 seasons in the minor leagues if you're that good of a guy. So I wonder for the Bryce Harper level prospects if teams ever try to tank in the future. But when you look at the NL West, are you feeling pretty confident right now that just Dodgers, Giants as the 2 playoff teams that are going to send? Because I don't feel too good right now that the D-backs are going to make the playoffs. According to Fangraphs, we have like a 20% chance below like the Marlins and the Brewers and the Cincinnati Reds. Basically, the only team that's in the race that has the worst chance than the D-backs make it to the playoffs, I think, is the San Diego Padres.
It's so funny how much data believes in the Padres. You know what I mean? Like they don't want to give up. You know what I mean? Like they'd still give the Padres somehow a greater chance than the D-backs, right? Like, that's insane to me. Literally, as of right now, the Padres have a 34.8% chance, while the Diamondbacks have 18.8%. And it's because of, and now this is just data projections, it's because of what I just mentioned to you, which is like top level defense with all his defenders. You have a starting pitching. Granted, Joe Musgrove was just hurt, but you're hopefully getting back Michael Wacha soon, right? Like that should be a big plus for this rotation. Lugo had a bad start, but still, nonetheless, Darvish has been showing some signs of life. I get it. And then you have like all the talent on paper. And if you want to go even deeper, last month, they're like 6th in WRC plus at the plate. Like they've been good. Like, and it's not a fluke. That's what WRC plus is for. It's not a fluke. Like they haven't just been hitting into luck. Like they've been really, really solid offensively, actually incredible. And this is what they've needed all year. Unfortunately, though, when the offense comes up, bullpen goes down, or vice versa, right? Like that's always seems to be the sign of a bad team, and a team that you can only realize that they're bad when you are able to view them like when you watch them every day versus viewing them from afar, right? Like I said, like the Padres offense 6th the past month basically, and then what is their bullpen? It is not great if I'm not mistaken.
Not good.
Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Last month.
Oh,
it's
wait.
the 13th best. Okay, so it hasn't been terrible actually, which is
bad.
interesting. But those are only their 13th in ERA. However, that's tertiary stats, and I will say in close games, I bet you their bullpen ERA has been pretty bad over the last month, which has been kind of the case the whole season. But what's funny is I bring that up even more reason, like the data is there, and I think that's why Fangraphs likes them so much. But again, I think it's just the Dodgers and Giants, man. I think the Giants find ways. It's weird and it's stupid because the Giants have like one of the worst offenses in baseball lately. Like none of their guys have positive WRC pluses. They just get timely hits and that's it. But unfortunately, that's what they do. And I just don't know, is it the same for the D-backs? Because I know you mentioned, with them, it's been kind of blown leads and they didn't have a closer for the longest time. They bring in Sewald. Like, what do you think it has been for the Diamondbacks? Has Corbin Carroll slowed down? Has Ketel Marte slowed down? Do they just not have the depth? What is Zach Gallen who owns us? Is it him? Like, what's going on, man?
Just everything sucks. Corbin Carroll, he slowed down in the second half. We've dealt with a little bit of injuries with the Evan Longoria, not too much. But Paul Sewald, his first opportunity to save a game for the D-backs, he gives up a home run on the first pitch and then gives up a walk-off home run like 4 pitches later. Like, nothing has gone good for the D-backs. They've been shut out a few times post-All-Star break. They've been swept multiple times. They lose every game. They blow leads late. They let teams build leads early. Like, basically everything you're not supposed to do as a Major League Baseball team, the D-backs are allowing other teams to do against them. So it just hasn't been pretty. There's not really much to talk about from a positive standpoint with the D-backs since mid-June. Zach Gallen, he's been all right. Like, honestly, the craziest thing is because I haven't felt like it's been a Cy Young season from Zach Gallen, but honestly, he's still the favorite on FanDuel. And statistically, I still think he has the best Cy Young resume, even though I don't think he's even been like a Cy Young worthy pitcher really this season. But he could potentially win the Cy Young. Corbin Carroll could potentially win Rookie of the Year, and that's basically all I'm rooting for at this point in the season. Obviously, they could still make the playoffs, but I have this bad feeling. It's a good feeling for you, but I have this bad feeling that the Padres are going to have a little good series against the D-backs this time, go against the Marlins, have a good little series there, then play the D-backs again, have another little good series. Then it's like, oh my God, the Padres only a game back of the Chicago Cubs, and then you're breathing down their neck. Musgrove comes back, Walker comes back. All of a sudden, the Padres are getting healthy with all their star power. I don't like the way the end of the season is shaking out right now, Javier. I got a bad feeling your team is not asleep yet in the race, and I'm not trying to Frankenstein them and give them a little jolt of electricity, especially from my team. I don't want my worst scenario is my team being the catalyst for your team because you've experienced this second half collapse. Like that's why I want to talk to you in the third segment right now. I want the third segment to be like a BetterHelp therapy session where you walk me through what it feels like to go from from this amazing first half where you're locked in, all-star, you're feeling good, you're like, yeah, we're going back to the playoffs, and then second half collapse for your team. It's just out of it. Let's talk about that in the third segment, Javi. I'm going to need a few pointers from you, but first. And don't forget to catch every D-backs and Padres pitch on their hometown broadcast when you download the SiriusXM app and search up Diamondbacks or Padres. Now, Javi, I was just saying before we went to that very long commercial break that I need you to just, help me mentally here because I am struggling. Those first 100 games, I was riding a high. As a fan,
I
was. I love to ride the emotional roller coaster as a fan. I was on top of the world. It's like a Ferris wheel when you're a fan. When you're on top, you can see everything. Got that skyline view. You feel like everyone below you is a peasant, a little ant. But then you get to the bottom, you're like, oh, they're the same size as me. And right now, the Ferris wheel is at the bottom in the second half of the season. Javi, how do you deal with this? How do you mentally stay strong to the end of the year? Because it's tough watching D-backs games right
now. Mentally stay tough. Honestly, I just try and I think you just try and be happy about what you have. In the case of the Diamondbacks, it's like young team. And what I would say is, in fairness, and this, I swear this isn't an insult. It's like, I think people were expecting that next year was their year. And this was just the year that some prospects would come up and be really, really cool and really good. And they still have some starting pitching issues that they have to turn out. We're going to do a little preview about that. But that's what I would say. And the other thing is Corbin Carroll's great. Zach Gallen's great. They have great players. I think that would be my thing. I think what's going to be interesting is seeing what they do in the offseason, seeing if their philosophy changes, seeing if maybe they snatch up a little free agent. They don't have to go big boy pants yet. You know what I mean? But we'll see, especially if they haven't made it. Right? If they don't make the playoffs and they don't say, all right, let's get a free agent, but not necessarily, go out and get an Ohtani level one, right? Let's just try and build around the edges, I think is the term to use. So that's what I would say. Just be happy about the stars that you do have. Be happy that you don't have underperforming stars that are that were supposed to be good, especially after you paid them. And that you didn't give up your entire farm system for one of them, and then you didn't extend him, but you extended everybody else. So at least you're not in this cluster of weirdness that is the Padres. And you mentioned before, how, the Padres, could they just be this sleeping giant and whatnot? And I will say that just poetically, thematically, the Padres have been proponents of a lot of firsts and things you don't see often, right? Hear me out. I'm going to land this plane.
Okay, I'm where are you going?
The small market, the Slam Diego vibes, small market becoming a big market, I should say, becoming really, really big. Not incredible or anything like that, but it's just, they evolve and they're the ones trading for Soto and they're the ones signing Xander and extending Manny and all these guys. When did that happen? All this sort of thing. They get their first no-hitter in franchise history. They've been doing a lot of things that they're not used to, especially if you're a Padres fan. So maybe they have one more trick up their sleeve. And that trick is to be the latest in a season that a team catches fire that we've seen in a long time. And maybe that's what happens here. I'm trying to inspire hope. I'm just saying if to add on to the ridiculous roller coaster, especially as long as I've been hosting this show, of the Padres, it's like crazy deadlines, crazy free agency, dead hour kind of trades, doing multiple trades over the course of 24 hours. People forget when they traded for Snell and Darvish within 24 hours of each other, and they signed Ha-Seong Kim all in 24 hours. It was nuts. Maybe it's like the last thing they have is they're going to be known as the Nationals 2.0, right? Like they started off so poorly and not even as bad as the Nationals. They took it all the way into August and then they turned it around against the series against the Diamondbacks. That's the case to be made for them. And I think that's what you got to always do is hope on that. And just fundamentally, I don't know, play a video game while you watch a game. You know what I mean? Do something else in the background. So like that way, if you feel like you watch this awful, miserable game, you're like, well, at least I had something. It's like a casual game. You know, I play like a little Marvel Snap. You know, that's my game of choice when I'm watching baseball because it doesn't require too much attention. I just look down, okay, boop, 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 put my turn, I look up. You know, it's not too bad. So maybe that's what you do. And then you just be happy about the stars you have and be happy. We're talking about NL West. Millard, I'm going to end it with this. Just be happy you're not the Rockies, man. Cool. Just be happy you are not the Rockies. Like, oh my God, Paul Holden. Oh,
sorry, Paul.
Guy. Locked on Rockies, man.
That one's rough. I did want to ask you though, real quick. I'm sure you've explained this on your podcast, but I do want to know, like, when did the philosophy switch for the San Diego Padres? When did they make that switch from small market to big market? Did they get like a change in ownership? Obviously, you brought in AJ Preller, but to actually give him the leash to be this aggressive after seeing the Padres not really be a team to go out there and spend money, just because you bring in a new GM, you actually have to let him go out there and do that work and spend that money. So how did that philosophy switch actually happen for the Padres? I'm actually kind of curious.
I think it's AJ Preller for sure, particularly when it comes to trades, right? Like having the go to be like, I mean, 2015, he comes on and immediately does all the Matt Kemp and the Justin Upton and Will Myers trades. Craig Kimbrell, another one, right? Like does all those deals. And that's partially like, that's a big thing for Preller. And then it's ownership. And I think that's one thing that if you're a struggling fan base, like, I just think you can attach so much to ownership. It's not a coincidence that the same team with an owner that's been there forever and has been incompetent, that they're bad. Right. It's not a coincidence that the Commanders have the worst owner in sports, and that's why they've been bad. It's not a coincidence that the Mets were so bad for so long. Then Steve Cohen comes in and is like, you know what? Actually, we're the Mets. What are we doing here? Let's go nuts. Like, I want to we're the Big Apple. Like, let's do this. Ownership changes can be huge. I think for the Padres and every other team. Right. And you've seen it with the Padres, especially, even if it hasn't amounted to quite as much winning as you would have liked. They've still had some really great moments, and like a lot of them, they've made the playoffs a couple times. You know, they had the Slam Diego thing. They have blockbuster value to them because of their stars. They have, at least you're talking about them, right? At least you're relevant. Even if you're bad, at least you're a relevant type of bad. You know what I mean? You don't want to be just like, who? The Reds have who? The blank have blank? The what? I don't know who that guy is. Everyone knows who Fernando Tatis Jr. is. I never thought I'd be at a time where one of the 3 or 4 most popular players is a Padre. Like just nationwide, like my dad who only follows the Yankees will text me about him and stuff like that. So that's kind of my mindset on it, right? I think that the ownership is just huge. And with the Pods, it's like, man, I mean, what a shift. It's really, and I will stand by this. Like, I just haven't seen a team fully change what they are in, dare I say, any sport, any major sport, at least, and like as much as the Padres have. This is a team that wouldn't extend Chase Headley for like $68 million, and he almost won the MVP. Now, obviously, he declined after that MVP year very predictably, but they refused to shell out that money for Chase Headley, who had one of the best seasons in their franchise in a while. And now they're just casually extending Darvish and Machado and Tatis. And, you know what I mean? Like, it's just such a turnaround. It's nuts, man. It's nuts.
Was Hosmer the first piece of this, you know, the change in philosophy of the Padres?
I'd say all the trades were, but the first signing, yes, it was actually the one and only Eric Hosmer, who, no matter what happens, gets brought up on this podcast. Even when I don't do it, someone else will. He's too attached to me. You know, I mean, he's too part of my story, my origin story. It feels like at this point. I hope he's doing all right, though, in all honesty. But yeah, man. And this weekend, big series. I'm curious to see if by the time the series is over, we look back on Friday and we're like, the Padres are bad, the Diamondbacks are bad. Like, maybe this doesn't even matter. We'll have to see. I know on Friday, we get our best starter, I believe. No, we get Blake Snell on Friday, but you guys have Ryan Nelson, which is the ultimate Like, oh yeah, that's not scary, right? Well, for those who might forget, the Padres are remarkably good at being bad against bad pitchers. Ryan Nelson was even worse than bad. He hadn't even debuted yet. And you know what his line was, Arm? First, his debut against the Padres.
Do you call me Arm?
Oh, wow.
No. It's like, who? Who's that?
I recorded with him today. That's why I did that. Do you know what Ryan Nelson's pitching line was? His debut, major league debut against the Padres.
What was it? I don't know.
7 innings, no earned runs, no walks, 7 Ks. And then to make it even funnier, you know who was pitching for the Padres?
Who?
Blake Snell. That's right. And he was great. He was really good. 6 innings, only 1 earned run, and struck out 10. Do we get history repeating itself? We might. I know he's not your best starter. And then just really quickly to run through the starters projected for the rest. Rich Hill on Saturday. Not great for the Padres. He got pretty lit up versus Zach Gallen. That's not looking great. And then on Sunday, we've got Seth Lugo versus Brandon. I always forget how to say his name. Okay.
Yeah,
not the best. Not the best. Not the best.
Gives up a lot.
But what's going to end up happening is the Padres will lose the first and third game and then win the Rich Hill start because that's how baseball works. But I don't know, man. It might be. I'm at the minimum. I just want a fun series. Don't make me sad. Like, give me back to back. Give me like a 4-3 game where it was like, both teams couldn't drive in the winning run. Maybe you get some extras. Maybe we get a fireworks show. At least make it entertaining. I don't want to see the Diamondbacks take a 2-0 lead and then Xander Bogaerts hits into a double play. Machado hits into a double play. Like the whole game. It's just like, come on. Like, let's show a little bit of fight. Let's show a little bit of theater. A little bit of pizzazz. Theater. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, man. I've been talking a lot, so go ahead.
Yeah, I already know Ha-Seong Kim is going to come through with like a big RBI double in the 9th inning because I always feel like he does. Big takeaway from this podcast. I think AJ Preller is Nicholas Fury and Eric Hosmer is Iron Man. He is Robert Downey Jr. He is Tony Stark. That is my big takeaway from this podcast.
Oh my God, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. My Marvel friend. Let's go.
Yeah, beautiful. Preller building the Slam Diego CU. I don't even know the SCU over there in San Diego.
SDCU?
SDCU?
San Diego Cinematic Universe?
Yeah, I was like, I couldn't really. Yeah, I don't know if that rolls off the tongue though. That's Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres coming at you with another crossover here. Where can the listeners find you,
Javi? You can find me at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or for tweets on the games. I like live tweeting them usually. Locked On Padres at LO_Padres, and then the YouTube, obviously. Locked On Padres, just search it up. We crossed 1,100 subscribers, I think, the other day. So shouts to you guys for tuning in. I know everybody hated my Joe Kelly rant on the YouTube comments, but it's whatever. Sometimes you're going to miss, man. Sometimes you're going to miss. I don't think I missed for what it's worth, but
Red Sox legend Joe Kelly. Don't you guys besmirch his name. At Creator Thomas 24 for my personal account on Twitter, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram, all your podcasting platforms, and Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. That's Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres for another week, another crossover. Until next time, sir. Dose.